to the Be Better podcast with Infinity Real Estate Services. True stories from Bakersfield's business owners and entrepreneurs. We have sold over 50,000 homes in the Kern County area, and we are still going. Delete your limiting beliefs. If you have a dream, turn it into a goal. Only massive, inspired action will get you to where you want to be. If you're starting a business or looking to grow one, you're in the right spot. Welcome to the Be Better experience. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Be Better podcast, where it's not just about real estate, it's about being better in general. And today I'm your host, Christian, and with me today is my good friend and the broker for Infinity Real Estate Services, Lee Barrison.
Thanks for having me, Christian.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Now, today is a special episode. Mm-hmm. We're not usually together to do this.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've known each other a long time.
Sure.
And today it's about overcoming adversity.
Yes.
Something that you and I both know a little bit about.
Correct, Mundo.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, I'm just going to be real. The heart of it is I was told, you know, don't let other people tell your story. Right? You got to tell your own story.
Agreed. Yeah.
And the fact is that if you're human, which we all are, if you're listening to this, you've had adversity in your life.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, there's been struggles, no matter who you are, right? Mm-hmm. No matter how great of a life you may have, you know, loving parents, you know, the whole Wally Cleaver house and all of that. You've still experienced adversity. You've had to overcome things. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about this, we're going to use our own life examples.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's not just, you know, I like to think of us as whole people, right? And so, yeah, you want to thrive and succeed in your business. Well, if your personal life is in shambles, it's going to affect your business.
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
And your personal life.
And yeah.
Yep.
So when we talk about this Be Better concept, we're not just talking about the nuts and bolts of what it's like to be better. We're also talking about what it's like to be better as a person, as a father, as a friend.
Yes, yes.
Right? All those things.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit first about the first adversity you went through as a young man that you overcame and that you didn't think you would overcome.
Okay. Yeah, well, I love the topic, as you know, because I think we've known each other for since second grade.
Yeah.
And we're 46.
Yeah.
And so you've lived in my shoes, time, you know, here and there. But, you know, I honestly think, you know, and I think this podcast is going to be special because, you know, being vulnerable is something that doesn't happen very often in today's society. You know, there's a facade. They try to paint a picture of how life ought to be. And whether you like it or not, if you're listening to this podcast, we have all had, you know, adversity in our life in some way, shape, or form. So, I mean, you know, just speaking on my behalf, my personal adversity, you know, I had a really good childhood. I had a mother and I had a father, and they were married for, I believe, 22 years. My mom was really a good start to this conversation, I think. You know, yeah. She turned to drugs and alcohol. She graduated from cocaine to heroin to anything I guess she can get her hands on at some point. Starting at the age of 13, when I was about 15 years old, she got heavily involved in prostitution. My father would eventually leave the house when I was about 15 and a half. He moved back down to Los Angeles because there wasn't much at home to stick around with, and I think he got kind of tired of the whole setup. So, yeah, I mean, you know, as a minor, at about 15 years old, 16 years old, you know, I had to, as a single child as well, I had to, deal with watching my mom go through all these issues. You know, she overdosed on drugs 3 times in my presence. She went to prison twice. You know, I'd catch her in hotel rooms. I'd have to drag her out. Sometimes she'd be butt naked. Sometimes she wouldn't. Sometimes she'd be overdosing. Sometimes she wouldn't. And basically, I was the crazy one every time I showed up trying to rescue her. That was my lifestyle between 15 to 18 years old. I was heavily involved in graffiti art. I think as a minor, not having any parental supervision and being able to do what I want and come home when I wanted to, whatever I wanted to do.
Yeah. And the statute of limitations is up on the graffiti stuff, just
so
you know.
Yeah, that is it. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
It's good to know. Yeah.
Good to know.
Maybe I'll get back into it here shortly. Graffiti art was my life. As you know, you and I both, we hit it hard and heavy for a long time, and it was a lot of fun. But it was very addicting too. There was nothing better than having a can of paint in your possession at all times, because you just never know what's going to happen. And I think when I was a minor, I think I from what I remember, Christian, is I got arrested about 12 different times for graffiti. And those are the times that I got caught, right? So, I do run pretty fast when I'm under pressure. And so I did get away quite a few times, but I think I did get arrested as a minor about 12 different times doing graffiti art. A lot of fines, a lot of ass kicking from my dad. I remember it was funny, like as a child or as a teenager, like when I would get caught tagging or doing something, the police would pick me up. And then they would start taking me home. And I would beg them, do not take me home. Whatever you do, please take me to juvenile hall, because I do not want to go home.
Yeah.
And my dad would, at 3:00 in the morning, would answer the door in his chonies. And he had that look in his eye.
Yeah.
And that look was like, dude, oh my God, just take me back to juvenile hall, whatever you do. Right. Yeah. And then he would, the door would shut. And he would chase me around the house, beat my ass, and then within 10 or 15 minutes, I'd be running down the street to go hide out somewhere else.
Yeah.
So that was
was like back when we were doing all this, they didn't have that 3-strike rule, because graffiti got really bad back in, we're talking about like in the 90s.
Yep.
In Bakersfield, it was really, I don't know if it was bad, it was dope.
It was bad. It was bad.
It was cool.
Yeah, as in good. Yeah.
But then California changed the law because graffiti was getting so outrageous, and they started making it a felony.
Yeah.
Which then put you in a 3-strike.
Depending on the damage, I think the amount of damage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that curbed a lot of taggers, right?
Yes, it did.
Like a lot of people were like, okay, I'm not trying to go to jail forever for this, right? But yeah, and then being a minor, so in those days, it was like, felt like the right thing to do was just to take you home. Deal with the property damage. I had the same thing. My dad took me to the place that I got caught tagging with simple green and a wire brush, and I had to scrub the paint off.
Now, was that enforced by your father, or was it enforced?
Yeah, it was enforced by my dad.
Okay, good. Okay. He
knew
your name, and he saw it, and he's like,
well, I got arrested.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And he had to pick me up.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, he was like, where'd you do it at?
Yeah.
And he made me go into the building. It was like some State Farm insurance place. And I had to walk in there, and I was coming down on drugs, and I had to talk to the whole room and say, I was the one that tagged your building. I'm sorry. I'm going to go outside and clean it now.
Yeah.
And I did, and I busted my knuckles trying to clean it, So, yeah, there was some guidance for sure, right? But it was like an act of rebellion to the home life, right? Like,
of course, yeah. Yeah, it kind of gave you a sense of freedom, I think.
And the crew, like, it was a bunch of us that ran around.
Yep.
And that became our
family. 100%.
Yeah. We felt like we belonged with these dudes because they got us. They understood us.
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yep.
And so it's just a way of coping, right? But eventually you put down the can.
Put down the can. One other story is that, like, my dad used to go on bicycle rides on Saturday mornings. That was like his jam, on the weekends after working. And, the night before, I'd always park my name around town. And he would come home. He goes, hey, I saw a new a new piece that you put together or whatever. I go, what are you talking about? He's like, dude,
you're being really slick and not saying your name, what your name is.
Bless one, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so yeah, he would always see that, and he would always give me a hard time about that. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, moving forward, so yeah, I mean, got heavily involved in drug activity, selling drugs, doing drugs, and then finally got arrested 2 weeks after my 18th birthday with 28 grams of methamphetamines, a full ounce, and went away for a long time, and that was a changing moment in my life because I didn't have anything at that point. My mom was gone, my dad was gone, nobody came to visit me but you and maybe one other or two other people.
I came to visit you because I got arrested too.
Right, but
Yeah.
you got
But it was still a visit technically.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So
But the thing is like that's a heavy charge.
sure, yeah,
Right.
it was a felony. Yeah.
And that was something you had to address when you decided to become a real estate agent.
Yep.
Almost 10, 12, 15 years later.
Yep.
Right. And that was quite a process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because it happened right after your 18th. So it wasn't like
I was an adult.
You were an adult and you had to deal with it. Right. And so the thing is though, that's an adverse situation. And when you decided to go, okay, I'm turning my life around and I want to become an agent and I want to do this and I want to make my life better and I want to provide for my family, you had to deal with it.
Well, yeah.
And you had to go and fill out a bunch of paperwork and do a bunch of stuff in order to get it. That's why you can talk about it now.
Because I have it.
Because you've dealt with it.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I love adversity. I mean, I think it's what makes us humans. I think adversity builds character, and it also builds, strength within us to where we can move forward instead of being, because I mean, if you don't have any adversity in your life, then you become weak.
Yeah, we're not advocating you catch a felony charge.
No,
adversity.
No, not today. No.
We're not advocating that.
Yeah.
What we're saying is that, but when you go through these things, it's hard to see it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Because you're in the middle of it. Right. And so, and some people right now listening might be in the middle of really big adversity.
Sure.
Right?
And I hope that this impacts somebody in somebody's life.
And
today.
so it's hard to see what I'm going through right now is going to actually improve my life. It's going to make me better. It's going to, make me more useful to help other people.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
And I mean, I know that you've been in the business for a long time. So you probably had people who come to you who have records like that and want to become an agent.
Yes.
And now you're uniquely qualified to help them move on to the new chapter in their life.
Yeah, I mean, it's allowed me to be a little bit more understandable about circumstances in other people's lives.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when I got out, I came home. My mom and dad were losing their house in 2 weeks to foreclosure. When I came home, everything was gone. My mom decided to sell everything I owned for money. I had a bed. I think I had probably 2 pairs of clothes left, and that was about it. So but she split. She was highly, highly addicted at that time on heroin. And so I bought a car off an old lady that lost her license for $1,000. The 1978 Mercury Zephyr, and that got me from point A to point B. It had a gas leak, it had an exhaust leak, it had oil leak, it was leaking, it was hemorrhaging in all areas of its life, right? Yeah. I couldn't drive on the freeway during the summers because it would overheat, so I'd have to take residential streets all the way to the Valley Plaza at the time. So it was just different, but so then I, obviously got back on my feet, got my GED, and because I dropped out of high school at 16, so then got my GED shortly after I came home, and let's see, got a job right away. I was making a whopping $6.50 an hour, which was pretty good money at the time. I thought, at that time, got my first apartment.
Ashland's hoping to get a raise to get to that point. Yeah.
Right.
She's waiting
too funny.
for you to give her,
Okay.
bump her up.
Yeah. We'll talk about that, Ashlyn, after the show here. No doubt. She's worth it. So,
so just to kind of like reflect these two kind of like extremes, right?
Sure.
Like this coming home to nothing, starting again with nothing, and losing that foundational support, right? Because our parents are supposed to be the ones who teach us to live.
Yes. Yep.
And they do.
Yep.
Some of them just teach us to live the wrong way.
Sure.
Right. But you had to face that and rebuild. And then during those days when you're taking side streets to the Valley Plaza to ball out and buy a Slurpee or something, did you picture in your mind that you would have a building in downtown Bakersfield with the logo that your homie designed on the, it's not a tag.
No,
but it's like a tag on a big ass building.
It looks dope high. Too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have ever thought that that's where you could get to.
No, of course not. I had no idea that what I was.
You were just trying to get through the day.
I was just trying to get through the day and keep the bills paid, and yeah, I mean, so I got into construction, which I was raised in construction. That's what my dad did all his life, and so it was natural for me to start putting nails in wood and framing doors and stuff like that. And so that's what I did for a while. But yeah, so then let's see. So shortly after that, I did get my real estate license, or I applied for the real estate license because my cousin did very, very well in his short career in real estate. He retired at the age of 36 and made $90 million. And
whoa,
yeah, he destroyed the industry here for a minute. And I was on my grandma's couch, and he says, "When are you going to get up and get a real job?" And I said, "Well, what do you want to do, Chris? I'll do whatever you want me to do," because obviously whatever he did, I'll do. So he says, go talk to this broker at Coldwell Banker, and he will get you a job. I said, fair. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Wow, I didn't know this part.
Did you not?
No.
Yeah, that's how it all started. And
so you show up
after work, and I was welding all day long with a mask on. And when I showed up to the interview, I looked like a raccoon. And I didn't even realize it till I interviewed and got back in the truck. I'm like, oh my God. Right. So it was kind of wild. But anyways, yeah. So he says, I just full disclosure, I have a felony. I'm not sure if this is going to work. He's like, don't worry about it. I remember when I got caught in high school, we were drinking and the cop made us pour their beer out. I understand. I'm like, all right, whatever. Fair enough.
Different charge here.
Yeah. So then I started the work on my real estate license back in 2001 or maybe even 2000. Yeah, about 2000. No, 2000. I'm sorry. Started my work, took the test 3 different times. Didn't pass on the first time. But the third time I did take the test, I finally passed. And going back to what you were talking about earlier, Christian, is that once I passed the test, the DRE, or the Department of Real Estate, denied me my license because of my felony. And so I hired an attorney with money I didn't have. I borrowed $2,000, and he says, meet me up in Fresno, and then we'll appeal it. So that's what we did. Went to Fresno, gave him $2,000. Within 5 minutes, they said, negative, he can't have his license. So then he says, we'll go up to Sacramento to the state, and we're going to appeal it again, and I guarantee you we're going to get you your license. I said, fine. So then I had to go find $2,000 more, met him up, and I drove 5 hours north to Sacramento for 5 minutes of court time, and they gave me my license. Boom. And that's how it all started. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's break this down a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm, sure.
You had to borrow $2,000.
Yep. That I didn't have. Yeah.
You'd already failed the test twice in a row.
Yes. Yep. Adversity.
So there's got to be that thing in your head that's saying, this ain't meant to be. What are you doing? Right? But because of the adversity of your past, there was something in you that says, I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to try again.
Sure. Yep.
Right? And then you pass it finally. You kind of knew, you had to know that you were probably going to get denied, right? Or
it was in the back of my head the whole time. Yeah. Yeah.
So then you get denied, which is that's got to be a blow. Finally pass it. Then you get denied. You got to borrow the $2,000, take the trip, get denied again. Right?
Yes.
Like, this is the point when people give up.
Yeah.
Well, I gave it my best shot. I borrowed $2,000 I didn't have. I got the test. I did everything I could do. It's out of my hands. It wasn't meant to be. I'll go back to welding.
Yep.
But something in you was like,
fuck this. I'm getting this shit.
yeah. What is that?
I think it's a sick-minded behavior. And I don't care. That's how I've always been. I just don't care.
You want what you want. You're gonna get
I
it.
want what I want. I'll get what I got to get. And it doesn't matter, you know, and I don't know how to explain it. I think it's an interesting characteristic of mine that not everybody has. And some people take it offensively because I don't care. But I think it's determination really is what it comes down to. Knowing that, look, I got this far, I'm like 80% there. All I've got to do is find $2,000 more and get up to Sacramento somehow and figure out how to put a tie on in the parking lot and get in the courtroom by 8:30. And then for 5 minutes, they say, yes, okay, here's your license. And then I take the 5-hour ride home. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Well, then you still got to get started in the business, right?
Now I got to get started.
Yeah.
So here I am.
Yeah.
22.
But that has to mean, to me, like when you've gone through all that to get to that point, right? That had to inform your hustle and your grind at that point. Because it's like, you earned this.
Yeah, man. I wasn't going to let this thing slide. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I can go back to welding if I want.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. You know, and it's really funny, Christian. So when I went on that interview with the broker that I was referring to, when I walked in the office, there's a bunch of, you know, older gentlemen and women that are dressed up in suit and ties, and they're drinking coffee around the water cooler, and they're talking about how good the weekend was, and they're comfortable in this AC ran building. And I thought to myself, wow, this is wild. Like, what do they do? I didn't even know what they did. So when I got my license, I didn't know what I was doing at all. You know, I had no clue of what to do. And so I just kind of had to figure it out. You know, like for instance, when it came down to dressing appropriately for the job, right? Yeah. I didn't have a suit and tie. So I had to go borrow money to go buy 2 suits. 2 suits so that way I can get in where I fit in, right? Mm-hmm. And so I bought a blue one, I bought a gray one. So on Monday I wore the blue suit, Tuesday the gray suit, Wednesday the blue jacket, gray pants, Thursday the gray jacket, blue pants, and then it was casual Friday. Yeah. I never took my stuff to the cleaners because it cost money, so I would sit there and steam my pants for the following week and just do it over and over again. Yeah. So 6 months into the business, I still haven't sold a home though.
Right.
And that was very difficult too, because I mean, you know, I'm you know, it's in my DNA to be a provider for me and my family, and it wasn't working very well, you know, and so for 6 months, I worked probably 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, and nothing happened. And finally, I got into coaching.
You got a coach?
With no money.
Yes.
Right. So 6 months in the business.
Put it on a credit card, max out the card.
Yes.
To get the coach.
Hoping that the card wouldn't go through, and $1,000 limit, and the coaching session was $1,000 for the first month. So now I'm really dead broke. Yeah. And then all of a sudden.
Which I just did recently.
Congratulations.
I took the money out of my savings, and I hired a coach.
Yep.
And I've had a coach before.
You paid her up front too.
And I paid her up front.
Yep.
And I didn't need to pay her up front.
Right.
But I needed to pay her up front, because I needed to know that I was committed to 10 sessions, and I knew I had it. And when I did it, I had that story of your situation in my back of my mind.
It went through your head. Wow,
yeah.
Wow, that's cool. Okay.
Because I'm like, okay, this is like, I feel confident in this person's ability to coach me in the way I need to be coached now. Which is not just about business or ministry management or how to, you know, manage a board or directors or whatever, but there's also personal things in my life, and it all intertwines. So I needed a coach who could help me in all those facets.
Is she helping?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, man.
When I finally, you know, I found her at some retreat, and I just knew, I was like, oh, that's my coach, you know? And the reason why, and I had a coach, that's why I became a coach.
Right.
Because I was like, whoa, this is like working. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. So yeah, I had to make that leap. So you get this coach who then begins to give you the tools and a lot of the fundamentals that you're teaching here today.
Correct. Yep. Nothing's changed.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, a couple of times through the story, Okay, we're getting real.
Let's go.
You mentioned your mom.
Yeah.
So she comes back into the story in a very big, profound way in her death.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And how that affected you.
Mm-hmm.
And the tremendous amount of adversity that caused.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting real.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a big one to get over.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever get over that.
No.
But we learn to live, I guess.
Well, it created, obviously, I mean, when she passed away, because, when she died from a heroin overdose, and I had to find her 12 hours later. But yeah, I mean, it was very tragic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it basically, I decided to quit life in general at that point. I was probably, it was 2012 when she passed. No, 2012, yeah.
Yeah, so you're at this point you're relatively successful at real estate.
Yeah, I was doing well. I
had a team.
Yep.
You're moving units. You're selling. You're buying your own properties.
Yep.
You're doing what you kind of had set out to do.
Right.
And then, which is kind of like talking about this in a general way, right? Which is like, okay, I've been through all this adversity. Now I got things going. Cool. And then life comes around and punches you in the balls.
Yeah. Cleanly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
man.
So to me, when I hear you say that, and actually you say you gave up, to me, I go, I understand.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I understand kind of going, okay, I'm tapping out for a while.
Yeah.
What was it that helped to pull you out of that tapping out and decide, because obviously from that point until where we are now, right? Mm-hmm. Infinity gets birthed, the building, the whole thing, right? So at some point you turned, you decided to get back into it.
Yep.
Right.
I had to, because I had a family, I've got a family I've got to support. And I think for about a good 5 to 6 months, I was completely checked out. I didn't care about anything, but then one day, or one instance, I just kind of snapped out of it, and I realized, okay, look, it's still in my DNA to be a provider. I'm not doing a very good job of that. And maybe I have to step back into character because she's not coming back. But I'm still here and my kids are still here. So I've got to, step up and get back at it, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
And I also had really a good support system, which, obviously it would be you and a few others that are in my circle that always really genuinely cared about what was going on. So
yeah, I remember a conversation we had, because at that point I'm already in Atlanta, mm-hmm. and you were really struggling, and I remember telling you it's not your fault, which is common when a loved one dies of an overdose.
Sure.
Right. People go through and I'm a person in long-term recovery. People I love die all the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you can't help but go, well, could I have done something else?
Yep.
Maybe
mm-hmm.
I should have called a little more. Maybe I should have texted a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, it's really tough.
Yep.
Right. And you needed to hear somebody tell you, because you were blaming yourself for a lot.
Oh, myself, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, again, that is a natural response.
Mm-hmm.
When someone dies in that way, especially to addiction, and today, who's listening right now that don't know somebody who's affected by addiction?
Sure.
Right. So you have to just get back into character, which is what you say, mm-hmm. right? And start to move forward again. What's that like?
It wasn't easy, but over time it got easier because, like I said, I still had a family I had to take care of. That, I did a lot more activities that kind of kept my mind on things, worked a lot and, tried to do everything I could for the family at the time. And basically just kind of, it just kind of dissipated over time, but I knew that she was in a better place than where she was. And that's where the acceptance of her death came in, where, there's no sense of her being alive anymore if she's gone through everything that she went through. Mm. And if we can't make it better, then maybe God can by taking her off this earth so that way she can spend the rest of her eternity with him. Mm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's a lot of adversity to go through, and we're still going through things.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And statute of limitation ain't up on that, so we're not going to talk about it. But it continues, right? And the thing is like, if you let other people tell your story, they're going to tell it from their perspective.
Sure.
Right?
What they see from the outside.
Yeah. But when you tell your story, people understand, oh my God, we're not that different. Right? Like, oh, I mean, I've been through stuff like that, you know, maybe not exactly those things, but I know what it's like to be discouraged, to kind of get a rhythm in life and then get hit with something like a death or something heavy like that, and to bounce back. Right. And, you know, that's a lot about what my life is about now, right? With the ministry that I run, it's all about telling those stories, right? And so the people that come on our show, they will share the darkest, gnarliest parts of their life. Craziest thing. I mean, 2 weeks ago, I had a woman come on the show who talked about she was sober for 15 years and she was free from being a prostitute for 14 and a half.
Shit. Okay. All right.
What does that tell you? It took a little while
Sure
for her to stop being a prostitute. But for her to come out and say that with the lights and the camera, she's using this darkest parts of her life to help someone. And when she's saying that, I have 3 people in my mind who I know are struggling with that very thing. A couple months clean. That's how they used to get money. And it's really hard when you used to get money that way to switch to getting money, go to a free job.
I think prostitution becomes an addiction over time too.
It's the whole thing. I mean, when she brought it up, I said, we need to do the show again and I need to not be on it. Like we needed to have just some women really talk about this because it's common.
Yeah.
You know, it's more common, but it's not talked about because it's so taboo. It's so traumatic for the women who go through it. But that's the reason why I do what I do with Most High.
Sure.
It's because I know that her shedding light on that, when I send that to someone or when someone listens to that, they're going to immediately feel a sense of, I'm not alone. Oh, they did it. Right? Because when I tell a story, you hear 6 months of still prostituting. But when someone else's story, they hear 14 and a half years free from that. Right? That's profound, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so, you know, and I think that's what I love about what we're doing here with Be Better is, you know, it's not just about business and sure, you're going to get some of that, right? But it's also about how do we be better in general, right? And so you mentioned a couple of things that helped you, and that was support.
Yeah.
A community, family, friends, church, all these, everything that we need it all.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you're thinking about the person who might be listening who is currently in one of these
adverse times,
right? What would you say to that person right now, no matter what their situation is?
Pivot and move. Just pivot and move. I think that's honestly what got me through it is like, you know, because if I stayed in my lane and didn't pivot, well, then the same stuff's going to happen time and time again, you know? So I had to embrace other lanes, right? And then move. It's, you know, you got to change, I guess the better way to put it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Pivot
and move.
Yep.
I mean, it's a lot about what I'm doing here this week, right? There's been changes. We had an intern. I can talk about this here because it's not my show. And he was doing great, and he had a relapse.
Yeah.
So I had this creative partner that I was working with, and we were doing a lot of stuff. And then, you know, one day he's there, and the next day he's not.
Yeah.
Thankfully, he's in treatment, and
that's
he
good.
needs to stay
in treatment.
He needs to stay there for a while. Anyway. But so that left me in a position where I'm like, okay, I'm alone again. I'm by myself with this, running this ministry. I have a business also. I'm the one who manages finances of the home. Me.
Not to mention you have kids and a wife and bills to pay and all this other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm the one responsible for the money.
Right.
Just letting you know.
Yeah.
That's weird. Right. So, and I'm just sitting in this room going, this is not fun. I didn't sign up to do this alone. And so it's pivot, right? Let me see what's up to. Well, I'm doing some stuff with Lee again, and I'd love to be out there. I know they love to have me out there, and let me pivot to get out of this pattern, right?
Right.
And I think patterns are so important to, number one, you have to become aware of the pattern. And number two, then you need to accept that that's the pattern.
Sure, right, yep.
Then you take action on addressing the pattern.
There you go, man, yes.
A lot of people skip the accepting of the pattern.
Right. Well, it's hard to accept it because I think it creates a lot of grief sometimes in their lives. They're thinking, shit, why did I allow this to happen for such a long time? But the pattern becomes very comfortable because it's almost like a security blanket at sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to change the pattern because if I change the pattern, well, now I'm going to become uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's the only thing making me feel good right now.
Right.
Yeah, and I would even say, because some of us get stuck in our heads or we get stuck in our emotions. So I would say change the pattern. If you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is go down and get a cup of coffee, maybe brush your teeth.
Or make your bed.
Yep. Just a simple, tiny, incremental, small pattern change, right? To just break the routine up, right? And if you are going through adversity, there are a lot in this area. There are a lot of nonprofits. There are a lot of churches. There are people neighbors who you never would know could be a great asset to you. So my thing to say to you is don't suffer alone. Please do not suffer alone.
Right. Because
you're sitting here in this suit and tie in a giant building you own.
I have shorts on and flip-flops, by the
way. And you just shared like this whole like journey, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like if people see the suit and tie and they forget that there was a whole process to get to this point. So no matter where you are in that process, don't do it alone.
Right.
Because you can't do what you're doing now alone, and you couldn't do what you were doing when you were suffering and going through these adverse times alone. So,
and you know what, Christian? I mean, I also just to butt in, but the circle that you surround yourself with, I think, is really important, right? My circle is really small, and I choose to keep it that way. I mean, there's a lot of acquaintances, a lot of people I work with, but they're not like in the circle. Does that make sense? Because I protect that circle, for one, but secondly, I pick and choose on who I can share my adversity with, and because they'll understand me. Some people out there honestly want to see you fail, and they'll, what is Tim Grover? It's a great quote, but he says, "Those that know don't talk. Those that don't know, those that talk don't know. Those that know don't talk." Right? So there's a lot of people out there that say a lot of stuff, but they don't know. And I'm glad to share this story with you guys because, now it's I think it's important to keep that circle nice and tight at all times because those that are in the circle, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. So this has been a radical episode of the Be Better podcast. Thank you to Ashlyn for running.
Thank you, Ashlyn.
The ones and twos sitting in here. And thank you, Lee, for sharing openly. And we'll see you guys next time.
Peace. All right. Peace.